Hi, everybody. Welcome again to Ivy English. I'm Bruce.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
We're here today for you, and we're here 6 times this month. Today is the very first day of December. And, of course, our first work each month is reading 2 shorter newspaper articles or magazine articles or downloaded information. And the first one of those that we're going to do for you today is called Billionaire Space Race Sparks Environmental Concerns.
我们的中文标题是富豪太空竞赛惹环保争议。那 sparks 就是引发的意思，引发的一些环保上面的 concerns 就是一些忧虑。那当然有了忧虑就会有争议。
Okay, I'll read this article, the first article, and then we go back and go over each and every sentence for you. Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk all have one thing in common. They are multi-millionaires who have financed their own way into space. This modern 21st century space race, while exciting and promising, is raising some significant concerns about its future carbon footprint. As of now, rocket launches and space flights don't occur often enough to cause substantial pollution, but things are expected to escalate quickly if the current pace of development continues. Each spaceship is a fossil fuel guzzling behemoth that can generate carbon emissions equivalent to a jumbo jet flight from London to New York. An increase in space traffic could have a devastating impact on the Earth's ozone layer and upper atmosphere.
Okay, so what do Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk have in common? They are billionaires. They're also men, have you noticed? But they're multi-millionaires.
Should be multi-billionaires.
I was going to say, maybe one of them hasn't hit the billion mark, but you'd have to. It has to be billionaires who have financed their own way into space on the backs of all the workers who they didn't pay enough. Okay, stopping with the commentary. If you finance something, it means you pay for it. And if you finance your own way, you pay your own way. And they paid their own way into space.Maybe they should stay there.
OK, 好，那我们看到这里3个人名，这个理查·布兰森，杰夫·贝佐斯，还有伊隆·马斯克。那他们这3个人呢 ，all have one thing in common。那 to have something in common 就是共同有什么东西，所以这3个人都共同有一件事情他们是有共通点就对了。所以像这个 to have in common 这是英文常用的当然像这个聊天的时候，你要交朋友的时候，常常可以说 Well, we have a lot in common 就我们2个有很多共同之处那他们有一个地方是共同的，一样的他们都是怎么样？都是 multi-millionaires， 就是他们是大富豪拥有数百万美元。那刚刚其实我们讲说，这3个人大概都至少他们应该都是 billionaire billionaire 就是他们是这个应该都有10亿美金以上的身价好，所以这3个人都很有钱。那他们怎么样？他们都是 financed， 就是在这里就是 provide money for something， 这是个动词例如你可以说 Well, his grandparents financed his college education 他的这个祖父母呢就付钱让他读完了大学那所以在这里讲这3个人呢，他们都 financed their own way， 他们都是付钱给自己铺了路进入了太空。
This modern 21st century space race.Well, there's been a space race since actually the late 1950s, at first between the Soviet Union at that time and the United States. And space race is normally used just for this purpose, sending rockets and satellites and people into space. But sometimes it is used for, say, now we have AI and certain kinds of computers, quantum computers and so on, and people will refer to the competition between and among nations to get the best and fastest and so on as a kind of space race, even though they don't directly have anything to do with going up and out into space. Well, a space race, while exciting and promising, it certainly is exciting, and promising. Many things are made for space travel and space exploration, which later on can be used on Earth, earthly matters. So it's not only that we make rockets and satellites and never see them again. Some of the inventions have an influence on regular industry.
Can I mention a thing that space race influences pretty mightily? Pretty strongly?
Yes.
Long-distance missiles.
For example, yes. Now, this space race, the actual space race, is raising some important concerns. This is worries or cautions about its future carbon footprint, which is a phrase that refers to how much carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, even methane is being produced by any particular action, industry, invention, and so on.
好，所以这个现代的21世纪的 space race 就是太空竞赛。好，那刚刚 Bruce 老师讲，它不一定是太空竞赛，它可能就是可以广义的指各种科技、尖端科技方面的竞赛。好，那这个 Angela 老师也提到说，这太空竞赛它带来的这个最大的一个副产品呢，可能就是长程火箭或长程飞弹啊，因为你要发射火箭，火箭技术一定要很好。好，所以 while 是 although 的意思，虽然it is exciting， 那 it is 把它省略掉了。那虽然呢蛮刺激的，而且呢非常 promising， 就是前景看好。好 ，showing signs of future success 啊，有这个迹象，未来应该是会很成功的啊，前景看好。虽然是这样子，但是呢，它也是 raising， 它也在 raise 在这里，它的受词是 concerns，to raise concerns about 就是让人开始担心起来啊，让人引起了一些担心、一些担忧啊。Concerns 就是 something that causes people to worry 啊，所以呢，那 significant 是蛮重大的啊，就是 great enough to be worthy of attention 啊，大到能够让你值得你注意的哈。所以这样的这个太空竞赛也这个引起了一些相当大的一些忧虑跟关切。关于什么呢？关于这个太空竞赛未来 future 未来的 carbon footprint 就是碳足迹这个问题。
As of now, so currently, this is another way to say currently. As of now, rocket launches and space can't speak today. Rocket launches and space flights. These two things, sending rockets into the air and flying through space, these things don't occur often enough to do something. They don't happen often enough to cause substantial pollution. So because they're fairly rare, because still expensive, they're not that polluting overall. But each individual rocket launch or spaceflight is extremely polluting. It's just that they don't happen that often right now. However, things are expected to escalate quickly. If something escalates quickly, it means the rate of it goes up dramatically if the current pace of development continues. So if we start sending people to space regularly, we are going to have a ton of pollution from this.
OK， 好，所以呢 ，as of now 就是截至目前为止或者是目前这个状况currently。那这个 rocket launches 就是这个火箭的发射啊，还有呢 space flights 就太空的飞行呢 ，don't occur often enough to do something， 就是它们发生的频率不足以怎么样，don't occur 或者 happen often enough to， 它们发生的频率不足以 cause 造成。Substantial 也是大量的意思啊，就是这个相当大量的 substantial 的这样的一个大量的 pollution 污染。但是呢，那这个东西各位底下这整块各位可以把它一起学起来，这个字串Things are expected to escalate quickly， 就是事情或者事态预期会快速的恶化或者增温这个 escalate 就是急剧升高或者快速的恶化这个怎么样？的情况之下会快速恶化呢？如果下面这个也很好 ，the current pace 就是速度 ，the current pace of development 目前的这个发展的速度 continues， 也就是如果照目前的发展速度持续下去所以这个地方这整个各位也可以背起来 if the current pace of development continues， 如果目前的发展速度持续下去的话，就会怎样
？Each spaceship is a fossil fuel guzzling behemoth that can generate carbon emissions equivalent to a jumbo jet flight from London to New York. So these three guys, these three billionaires who've been into space on their little spaceships, had just a few passengers for each. I don't think any of them had 10 or more, just a few. But the ship itself is so heavy and is moving so fast that it uses tremendous amounts of fossil fuels. This is not a firecracker. This requires very carefully made and very polluting and very powerful fuels that generate carbon emissions. This burning creates carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, and so on, equivalent to, which is a fancy way to say equal to, a jumbo jet flight from London to New York. A jumbo jet with, say, 300 to 400 people on it instead of just 5 or 6, flying a distance of some 3,000 miles or 5,000 kilometers. It's about the same amount of fuel that is burnt, or at least, if not the amount of fuel, but the amount of pollution.
好，所以 each spaceship 每一艘太空船都是一个 fossil fuel， 就是矿物燃料或化石燃料。好 ，guzzling 就是狂饮啊，大量快速的喝啊，狂饮。所以它会狂饮化石燃料，换句话说，它非常耗油啊，耗这些燃料的这样的一个 behemoth， 就是一个庞然巨物啊。这圣经里面，在这个 Job 啊约伯书里面描述的一个巨兽啊。那有人猜它可能是河马了啊，所以他们都是这个非常耗油的庞然巨物。那他们可以 generate， 可以 produce， 可以产生碳排放啊 ，carbon emissions。那产生的量是怎么样 ？equivalent to 就是相当于一架巨型喷射机a jumbo jet， 然后呢 flight 这样的一个班机，巨型喷射机的班机啊，从伦敦飞到纽约啊，所以他们碳排量跟巨型客机伦敦飞到纽约的碳排量其实是一样的。
An increase in space traffic could have a devastating impact on the Earth's ozone layer and upper atmosphere. So an increase in something means that it has gotten more and more. And so if we get more and more space traffic, it could have a devastating impact. Devastating means basically things get wiped out. It is a very, very strong and bad impact. On what? On Earth's ozone layer. The ozone layer is a layer of
ozone.
Yeah, ozone. It's an aerosol that surrounds the Earth and basically protects us from harmful cosmic rays. It prevents us from getting basically microwaved. It's a insulation. We need it, or we're going to have to adapt really, really fast, you understand? So the ozone layer and upper atmosphere. So it's not sure that it's really a good thing that we have constant space traffic. It's probably not a good thing.
好，那the ozone layer 就是我们讲的臭氧层啊，所以这句讲到说太空交通的增加，好 ，an increase in something 就是这个东西的增加，那在这里增加了就是 space traffic。那太空交通的增加可能会有一个 devastating， 就是极具破坏性的、毁灭性的这样的 impact 影响啊。对于什么呢 ？On the Earth 对于地球的臭氧层，还有高层的大气层 upper atmosphere。可能会有破坏性、毁灭性的影响。
Okay, let's go to our second short news report. Korean kimchi renamed again as Kimchi. The Chinese transliteration, I'm sorry if I get these words wrong. I don't know Korean and I can't read Chinese in English. The Chinese transliteration for the Korean word kimchi has always been a tricky issue. In 2013, South Korea made an effort to create a reasonable Chinese translation for kimchi to differentiate it from the pao cai used in China's Sichuan province. Since there is no equivalent for the kim sound in Chinese, an accurate transliteration was not possible. After much analysis and comparison, the name Kimchi was chosen. The word was unpopular, though, and was changed back to pao cai. Recently, a pool of 16 candidate translation names was put up for selection as the new term, with Kimchi being among them. It was determined that the pronunciation of Kimchi was the most similar to the original Korean word. It also carries the meanings of spicy and novel, and was therefore the best choice.
Okay, so the Chinese transliteration for the Korean word kimchi has always been a tricky issue. Transliteration just means how do you translate one word into another language by using the same sounds. So we're not translating the meaning, we're transferring the sounds into something similar in the new language. And that's the difference between translation and transliteration. Now, regardless of what language you're doing, this is a tricky issue, but especially when you're transliterating something so central to somebody's culture as kimchi, that's definitely a tricky issue. If something is tricky, it's not like it's trying to cheat you. Tricky means it's delicate and hard to negotiate, and people will have a lot of feelings about it, and so you have to be careful.
好，所以这 tricky 啊，在这里其实是棘手的意思哈。一个棘手的 issue 就是一个议题。好，那 tricky 啊，它是可能you need to be careful 啊，或者是 tactful 啊，要很有技巧的 tactful 啊 handling this issue.
Not my strong suit.
Not mine either. 啊，所以呢，这是一个棘手的问题。那前面这个句子讲到这个 the Chinese transliteration 就是音译哈，照声音直译。好，所以那 for 就是你要照声音直译到中文哈，把这个 Korean word 把韩文这个 kimchi 这个字把它直译到中文呢，这一直是一个很棘手的议题。
In 2013, South Korea made an effort. They worked hard to create a reasonable Chinese translation for kimchi to differentiate it from the pao cai used in China's Sichuan province. Province is pretty much the same thing as a state, the United States, but some countries use provinces like France. Anyway, we all know Sichuan, where it is and how big it is and so on, and we all know that it's very famous for its pao cai. But in using using Chinese words for this Korean concept, to say the least, has been very, very tricky.
好，所以呢，在2013年的时候呢，南韩他们 made an effort to make an effort to do something， 就是做了一番努力也就特别去干嘛他们特别就 create， 他们经过一番努力之后呢，就创造了一个 reasonable 一个合理的中文的翻译for kimchi。然后呢，目的是 to 就是表示目的，要 differentiate。好 ，differentiate 就是分别。通常我们讲 differentiate A from B， 就是把 A 跟 B 做区分。那在这里，它要区分的是 it， 就是指这个kimchi， 要把它跟什么区分呢？跟泡菜。那泡菜怎么样？后面一个形容词子句修饰它used in China's Sichuan province， 就是在中国四川省所用的泡菜，它要把它做区别。
Now, since there is no equivalent for the kim sound in Chinese, if you have an equivalent of something, you have something similar or nearly the same thing. And there's no sound in Chinese that sounds anything like kim. So an accurate transliteration was not possible. It wasn't possible to find something that sounded exactly the same.
好，所以呢 since 就是由于既然因为没有 there's no equivalent for 就是没有相等或相对的东西那对于什么来讲没有相等呢？对于这个 kim sound， 这个 kim 这个声音在中文里面没有对等的声音因为这样子，所以呢一个 accurate 一个正确的一个 transliteration was not possible 是不可能的。
After much analysis and comparison, the name Kimchi was chosen. People worked very hard on this to analyze things, as to think about and try to understand and try to solve problems. And comparison of the two languages, they decided that Kimchi was maybe the closest thing to kimchi as a reasonable solution.
好，那在 much 是修饰那个 analysis 是分析这个字它可以当可数名词这个时候它的复数是 analyses后面变成 ses， 但在这里它是把它当作不可数名词来用，因为是很多的分析，就分析这种东西抽象的分析。你如果把它变复数的话，就是讲一项一项的分析了。这里没有谈到一项一项的分析，只是大量的分析。所以很多分析还有比较之后呢，这个名字新奇was chosen.
The word was unpopular, though. For some reason, it didn't take off. And truthfully, anytime a new word is tried to be imposed on people, it generally does not take off. People are very picky about new language they will pick up, and the source of it matters. You almost never can influence the language from the top. This is like just a historical thing. So I'm very unsurprised that it didn't work. So it was unpopular. No one liked it, and it was changed back to 泡菜. I mean, you can just say 韩国泡菜, so why not?
Yeah. 而且新奇makes me think of novel.
Right.
Something is very novel, 新奇.
It also sounds like weak, like
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, 我也不太喜欢不 anyway 这个 no one asked me 所以the word was unpopular 这个字呢，它是不受欢迎的，没有人支持然后呢，所以它就 was changed back， 它被改回泡菜那刚刚这个Angel 老师他讲说这个新的字呢这个没有 take off take off 本来是起飞，那在这里的话就是表示成功的意思。另外一个类似的说法就 it didn't fly 就是它没有它这个没有成功。OK， 所以它这个因为没有成功，因为不受欢迎，所以又被改回了泡菜。
It didn't fly also has the meaning of it wasn't accepted.
OK.
Like I told the group that we were going to get up at 6 tomorrow morning, but it didn't really fly with them.
OK， 也可以表示没有成功。Yeah.
Okay, recently a pool of 16 candidate translation names was put up for selection as the new term. So there were 16 possible names suggested or offered for people who were doing this analysis, with Kimchi being among them. One of the 16 was the word we already introduced.
好最近呢 a pool 就是一群一群这个有16个这个 candidate 候选的名字the translation names 这个候选的这个译名was put up for 就是被这个 provided 那 for selection 被提出来让你选那来当做这个 new term 那 with 它附带状况这在这16个字里面16个名词里面呢新奇是 among them.
It was determined that the pronunciation of Kimchi was the most similar to the original word. So this was the best transliteration they could come up with in terms of the sound, Shin being the closest they could get to Kim.
Yeah. 好，所以呢，这个地方刚才讲说 it was determined that 就是决定了这件事情被决定了。什么事情被决定了呢？这个新奇的 pronunciation 它的发音呢 was the most similar to 最像 the original Korean word 这个就原来的韩文的那个声音新奇是最接近的。
It also carries the meanings of spicy and novel, not the book, but something that's new, and was therefore the best choice. So they got right back to where they started from.
Yeah, 那这个新奇呢也 carries the meanings of 它也带着这个意义因为新奇那个新就是新香料的那个新，所以就 spicy。然后呢，那个奇是新奇的 novel， 所以 spicy 跟 novel 都有这个意思，在这个译名里面呢。因此呢 ，therefore 它是个 the best choice， 它最好的选择。
Okay, that's it for today's lesson. We'll be back with you again next week. Until then,
bye-bye.